Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome back to Message in the Middle. I'm your host, Marianne, and today we're talking about tenacity. Not grit, not hustle, not grind, tenacity. Because for many of us in midlife, it's not that we don't care or that we're not capable. It's that we've been pulled in so many directions for so long that somewhere along the way, we stopped chasing our dreams and choosing ourselves. And tenacity, real tenacity, can help us get back. My guest today is Scott Scovill, a Nashville-based entrepreneur, entertainer, and founder of Moo TV, one of the most acclaimed live video production companies in the music industry. With a career spanning more than 3 decades, Scott's worked as a video director and visual designer for some of the biggest names in music, including Garth Brooks, Brad Paisley, Luke Combs, Dierks Bentley, the Rolling Stones, and David Bowie. And in a turn that seemingly came out of left field, in his 50s, Scott discovered he could sing and went on to open for Brad Paisley in front of sold-out crowds of thousands of people in Europe. As if that wasn't enough, Scott released a book called Tenacious, The Art of Relentlessly Pursuing Your Wildest Dreams, an honest and often messy look at failure, persistence, identity, and what it really takes to build a life that feels aligned with who you are, even if you're discovering that person later than you expected. Scott, I'm excited to talk to you today, and welcome to Message in the Middle.
I'm excited to talk to you. That intro was great. You get it. You get it. Yeah, let's talk about it.
I think I get it. But you really get it. I mean, you've lived it. So I want to start us at the beginning of the book in one of the most vulnerable spots of all. So you're sitting, to set the stage for folks that haven't read the book yet, but I'm sure they'll go get it. You're sitting in the guidance counselor's office. You're feeling less than, for sure. You're struggling. You even feel broken. And later, a psychologist confirms that what you've been feeling is there and tells you that the act of trying, just the act of trying, felt almost impossible to you because how deeply you feared failure. So it was kind of hardwired for you. Take us back to that time, and what did that actually feel like?
Yeah, when my fear of failure was so extreme that when I would sit down to do something as simple as my homework, my thinking would get a little cloudy. My brain would start to just kind of race, and I'd lose focus. I'd start to sweat, and I wouldn't be able to make progress with it. And I didn't know what was going on with me, but I would devolve to the point where I would end up in tears at times. And so, being an 18-year-old senior in high school and ending up in your mom's arms because you can't do your homework is a pretty vulnerable and really not a great place.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then the psychologist said, you have a fear of failure that's so extreme, it'd be easier for you to grab a red hot stove and maim yourself than to actually try, which is a crazy way to put it, but I appreciated it. And that felt really real to me. But knowing what's wrong with you is a great first step towards getting over and getting better.
Yeah, 100%, even if you don't really recognize that in the moment. But yes, it definitely gives you information you can work with later. I want to fast forward just a little bit, couple years, I think. So you're 20, you're waiting tables at Howard Johnson's, you're depressed, and all of a sudden U2's road crew walks in.
Yeah.
The road crew walks in and they sit at your section. And that turns into a free concert ticket and an unexpected spark that you probably hadn't imagined. And not long after that, you quit your job, sell your car,
Yeah.
you're living in the back of a Subaru, and you're following you two around and, kind of sneaking in and helping them do their thing for setup and learning all about it. What I really want to know is you called that the worst plan ever.
Yeah.
But you did it anyway.
Yep.
What shifted in you
Yeah.
that made trying and made taking those first steps possible all of a sudden?
Well, I think a groupie loves a band and follows a band. I was a roadie groupie. I just wanted to be a roadie. Like, I just wanted this life. When I discovered that you could have a life in music without being a musician, like, whoa, music was my pinnacle. Music was my religion in a way. And so that was just thrilling to me that you could maybe do this. But, I was at rock bottom, but I wanted my life to be more. When you're a kid, you think your life's going to be amazing, and you're bringing everyone in to the point where I'm discovering that my life is not amazing and is probably going to be less if I keep doing what I'm doing, way less. And so I'm disappointed and I'm ashamed of myself. But at the same time, that's not what I want from me. I have dreams. Even if they aren't specific, I certainly don't want to have a life that feels disappointing and shameful. And the U2 road crew just showed me that I could work in music, and suddenly I had a dream. So I had all this built up frustration and desire to be more and to not be ashamed and to be proud. But until I found a dream, I didn't know where to point it. And that was such an important thing for me in that rock bottom moment, to discover there's something I could do that I might love doing. And, specifically, that my decision happened as the lights went out and the crowd went wild. And I stood there in the dark with 15,000 fans just screaming and going nuts. And I was like, whoa, you love technology, you love music, you love the idea of traveling the world with a band. But if you do your job right, you make these people so happy they scream.
Yeah.
And all of that was so magical to me that I was thrilled in the moment. And I remember thinking, this is what you're going to do with your life. But a moment later, my heart sank when I realized to do any of this, I was going to have to try. Standing there in the dark, I made myself a promise that I was going to start trying and never stop trying, no matter how much it hurt. That was the pivotal moment, and the moment that I really just decided that I'd had enough, and now I have a dream, and I'm going to go somewhere instead of standing still.
You alluded to it, and you talk about it in the book too, about the reason that you failed out of college and some of these other things, because it wasn't your dream. It was an expectation, I think you come to realize. And you just made that distinction in talking about when you realized this was your dream and it was what you wanted to go after. And I think you've recognized now that the tenacity to endure is something different than the tenacity to pursue. So what do you say to someone who's spent years living up to other people's expectations, and how do they start to reconnect with what they really want to do and find their tenacity to follow that?
Yeah, I mean, I had a really substantial and diagnosable dysfunction, but I, to this day, have many dysfunctions, little things that I could and should do better. We all do. And some of them are obvious. When you're in your mother's arms crying at 18, it's obvious.
Yeah.
But some of them are, you're organizing your sock drawer when you really could be taking a step towards a dream because that needs to get done. And that's a bad example because you don't really need to organize your sock drawer. You'll be okay if it isn't. But you're doing something that, you really need to do instead of chasing your dream. And I find that a lot of that, for me at least, is fueled by the background fear that you don't totally perceive, but it's driving you. So I like to say that I'm still very afraid of failing, and I still live with that fear, but I recognize when it is guiding my actions, and I say, no, that's not who I am anymore. I'm the guy that heads towards the scary things. And Richard Branson has one of my favorite quotes ever. It says, if your dreams don't scare you, you have the wrong dreams. And so when I'm a little afraid, when I just realize and catch myself
Yeah.
doing yard work when I should be doing something that would really make a difference in my life. I'm picking up sticks in the yard, maybe. I'm like, man, I'm avoiding this because I'm afraid of it. And that's not who I am anymore. I'm going to march towards what I'm afraid of.
I love that.
I'll drop the sticks, go inside, and start doing whatever that next step is. And part of what makes it scary for me is, fear of failure. So whenever you're headed towards something challenging, like we'll use my most recent one is this book. Like releasing a book is terrifying. There are so many times that I would find myself doing something other than writing the book, or especially finishing the book. Writing the book was easy compared to finishing the book, because when you finish a book, the next thing you do is release it. And that's terrifying because I spent years writing this book, and it's like, here's this book and so much of me is in it. What if people don't like me?
Yeah.
And I found so many ways that were happening under the surface that I perceived that I just had to dig in and get over. And so I don't think that ever stops the little things that get in our way that we do first, that we really shouldn't do first. Like picking up sticks in the yard, like who cares?
Yeah.
But,
They're almost distractions, right? To avoid what we need to do. But let's talk about that, the fact that it took several years to write the book. And obviously you had other things going on as well, but let's just explore the why and how do you know to keep pushing? How do you know that that's the right thing to do versus when it's actually time to pivot? Because there are times where we may have a dream that it may not suit us. And maybe at the end of the day, it's not the right thing for us. And we do have to pivot at some point. Like, how do you draw that line? How do you personally draw that line?
Yeah, for me nowadays, is it something I want to do, which is such a simple thing, but do I really want to do it? And so when you get into my why, I found out I had a fear of public speaking. Moo TV won an award. I got up on stage and gave an acceptance speech and walked off stage and had an anxiety attack.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, what the heck? I thought I was having a stroke. It turns out I was so afraid of speaking that I stopped breathing. So if you don't breathe, you're going to fall down. And I did. But yeah, I did a little public speaking because I don't like being afraid of things anymore. I started asking colleges if I could speak. And in getting over that fear, the second talk I did, a girl started crying in the front row. And after the talk, I said, "What's going on with you?" And she expressed that she had quit school that day. She had quit college. She went to all of her classes and said, I can't do it. And she decided to go to my talk just in case she would see one of her other friends from the campus. And halfway through my talk, she thought, if Scott could do all the things he did, man, I can finish college. And she said, in the moment I realized I was going to finish college, I started crying and I couldn't stop. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, don't be sorry. This is amazing.
Yeah.
And so she did finish college and even went on to another school after that. And I mentored her a little bit. But being able to help someone like that by just sharing my story felt amazing to me. So it was great for her, but it was great for me. You know, the scared kid who's afraid of failing is now the guy who other people are getting inspired by.
Yeah.
How did that happen? And can I do more of that? Because that feels amazing. And so that's the why for the book. Because of that girl, and people have already been reaching out to me about being inspired and starting to do things they weren't doing. God, one guy reached out and said, hey man, I've been an addict for quite a while, and I read your book and I started reading it again, and I just stopped using, and wish me luck, man. But I am rereading your book in perpetuity until I get over this. And I was like, wow. And it's not even a book about addiction, right? But it's a book about trying. And there's a guy who's trying. And so that's my why. And it's huge for me.
Yeah, I love that.
I want to help people. We've all felt a lot of hurt. Yeah, that's just part of life. And I think the empathy that yields wants an outlet. And I think that this was a great outlet. So that's my why. I
love those experiences for you, for anybody, because it's no matter what scale it is, when you get that kind of feedback from somebody, I don't care how much money you make, how famous you get, how all the things, when you strip those away, which we all know could be gone tomorrow, it's that stuff that really matters and really makes a difference. So it's such a great why. You talk about the more you do things, you've now taught yourself to push through and to try. I mean, you really have taught yourself. And I guess, well, let's stop there, because that is one of the premises of the book, is that you can build or you can grow your ability to be tenacious and to have tenacity. And you even argue that, every exceptional person has tenacity. And, some of them grew that, developed that. Yeah. You strongly believe that, right? I mean, that's a thing. And do you believe that comes from just pushing yourself and trying again and doing more and more?
Yeah, the magical thing. So being tenacious is the difference maker in my life. And I, in desperation, chased after being on the road with you two or similar. And in the next 2 years, I had a lot of breakdowns. I tried, I cried, I powered through, I kept going. And man, 2.5 years later, I'm on tour with the Rolling Stones, traveling the world, living my dream, still struggling for the first half of the tour, probably feeling like I didn't belong there, wasn't good enough, I was failing. But by the end of the tour, I really had beaten my fear. Mm-hmm. And I was like, whoa, kid, take a look around you. You're in Japan with the Rolling Stones right now. Like something's working here.
Yeah.
But the wonderful thing is, once you wire yourself to do that, the incredibly simple act of just try and keep trying no matter how much you fail. I mean, it's that simple. So I say early on in the book, like, want a refund? It's this simple. Like, before you say you want a refund, let's talk about why it's incredibly hard to implement and why we aren't all living our very best lives. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we lean into there. But the magical thing is, I did work that muscle to get that dream.
Yeah.
But once I had that skill and that knowledge, I could just employ that with everything. Mm-hmm. So later I built companies. I have 4 companies now. I used it to play hockey as a fun one. But at 35 years old, I learned to ice skate and played hockey for like 20 years and loved it. I'm a little old for hockey right now. It's a bit of a physical sport. But I used it to become a singer, and I'm opening for Brad Paisley again in Norway in June. Yeah, and I used it to write the book. It is a muscle. Once I broke down and broke through the barrier and taught myself that I could do all this, it just got easier. And all of my guests most of them are household names. I've got 17 guests in here that are super top of their field people, Hall of Famers, and then some other people like astronauts, right? But they all will tell you the reason they made it is tenacity. These are people who have, a couple of them have eidetic memories, photographic memories. A couple of them are pitch perfect. The athletes in my book have the incredible ability to build muscle and a natural balance that's just, off the charts. Those things you can't learn. If you don't have a photographic memory, you can't learn one.
Right.
If you don't have that natural balance, you can't learn it. You can get better at balance. Yep. But tenacity, the thing they talk about when you ask them why they made it, you can 100% grow that. And that's what I thought was worth talking about in the book.
Yeah, one of the themes that I really enjoyed in reading all the stories, the contributor stories, and yes, they're names that they're unexpected names, really, that you wouldn't expect to be in there. It's that, we've all heard the saying that everybody sees somebody become famous or sees somebody reach their goal and they forget the journey or they don't realize the journey. And that's what kind of kept ringing through my head, is that these folks all talked about how much they had been, beaten down, hit shut doors, got no's, didn't get the team, all the things, right? Had side detours, but just kept getting back up and just kept going back at it. And that's, to your point, what got them to there at the finish line. But I think so often we lose sight of that. We just think, man, they're lucky. How did they get, whatever, they got discovered, or whatever it, depending on the scenario. But yeah, I think we forget that. And so,
well, I think there's a great example of that right in chapter 1. Scott Hamilton is my chapter 1 guest, who's one of the greatest humans I've ever met. Like, it's Dolly Parton and then Scott Hamilton, like in rare air. Just, but he, you know, he had cancer he was born with cancer.
Yeah.
He had cancer as a child. It went on undiagnosed. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. His growth was stunted. The other kids picked on him. They found out he was adopted. They picked on him for that. He was so sick. It was just, he had an awful childhood, but he had to endure that. And enduring that, to me, built up his tenacity.
Yeah.
To where if Scott didn't have cancer as a kid, there's no way in the world we would all know who Scott Hamilton is. And there's no way in the world he would have won Olympic gold. And I would argue that he would beat cancer later in life, because he's been up against cancer 3 other times in his life, including right now. And he continues to beat it. And that tenacity, like I say, he was blessed with misfortune. And I like to think of it that way for me too. Like, I know all the reasons why I was dysfunctional. I've done some really deep dives, but I don't talk about them in the book, and I don't think we need to talk about them here. Because everybody has their reasons why they're broken.
Yes.
But man, tenacity is the vehicle to just get over all of that. Just be willing to hang it out there, be willing to fail. Yeah.
Scott's story was very compelling, and I, of course, know of him and the celebrity of him and the things that he's done even after the Olympics, but I didn't really know his story. So even just reading the highlights there and what he had been through, it shined through how it really made a difference. So I loved that contribution.
Yep.
I want to talk about your mom a little bit.
Yeah.
She's such a powerful presence throughout this story. And you've even referred to crying in her arms multiple times just in this short conversation. So to me, that tells me how very important she is to you. And again, for those that haven't read the book yet, she's this female executive. She becomes an executive, what we'd call, a top executive today. But it's back in the 1960s. She's navigating a divorce. She's rebuilding a home on her own virtually. That's really in dire shape. And she's raising you. But she never framed any of it up, at least from what I can tell in the book, as a hardship.
None of it. There were challenges with my dad that were clearly a hardship. But, moving into a house where the side door was open, a family of raccoons lived inside, and there was a dead raccoon in the living room. And it was so bad. Her father came up to see it right after she bought it, and he burst into tears, my grandfather. But, we rolled up our sleeves and we fixed it. And I never felt poor. I just felt really loved and supported, and everything was always okay. And there was always a way. And as she just kept saying, like, if I just left it to her to just, like, here's a pen, write your section, she would write me one sentence. You just do what you have to do. And she'd smile and hand it back to me. And I'm like, no, we're gonna need more than that. And we really had to I had to drag her story out of her, because to her, it's like, nah, what's there to talk about? You just do what you have to do.
Yeah, I got that. Just so you know, that's exactly the sense I got from reading the book, is that was her, that you had to force her to write that. And obviously I'm saying force with love to write that.
I did. I had to drag it out of her with love.
But again, you could tell that she's weaved throughout, and the essence of her is weaved throughout the story. And I have to imagine that even if you didn't know to call it that back in the day, that she was tenacious, and that you picked up on that subconsciously, whether or not you knew it. Or how to, what to take away from it. It has to be something that she passed on just through what she modeled.
Yeah, I think she was an outstanding role model in every way, including that. And that's why she's a guest in the book. That's why she's my favorite guest in the book. 16 famous people and my mom, and she's the best.
I love that. I love that for you. I have to talk about being in your 50s and discovering you could sing.
Yep.
Because
it was late 40s, but yes. Yep.
Okay. Late 40s.
Yep.
And for me, the demographic that I talk to is midlife, mostly women, but people in midlife. There are definitely some men in here as well. And I just think it highlights that you can go back to or find a dream at any age. Doesn't matter. You've shown that over and over and over again. And I guess I want to know a little bit more about, you said there was a line thrown in earlier in the book, something about you were told when you were young you couldn't sing. And that was kind of just thrown in there. But then later on, you realize, oh, wow, he becomes a singer and he has his own shows and he's opening for Brad Paisley. Yep. Like, this is a big deal. And I guess I hit on that because one of the things we talk about is so often we get these subliminal messages or programming as we're growing up. And it may not even be a intended put down or an intended consequence, but it could just be, and I'm making this scenario up, you could be being silly and somebody says, don't quit your day job, you can't sing, but you're 12 or whatever, right? But that sticks with us. Yeah. How did you go from thinking you couldn't sing to getting on stage?
Well, first of all, that there's so much confirmation bias. If you think you can't, you can't.
Yes.
Right. And I quote Henry Ford a lot in the book, the same quote over and over. What do you think you can or you think you can't? You're right.
Yeah.
And so, you got to think you can. So I thought I couldn't. I was told I couldn't at an age where I believed that I couldn't do anything right. In a lot of ways. And so I bought it and I believed it my whole life, even though I love music. I am a baritone, which means when I try and sing along with the hits of the day, Journey, that's all up in the stratosphere and head voices. And I just couldn't do that. My voice would break. So I just thought that was it. I can't sing. I was singing but I sang anyway when I was alone, or in this case, in this story, it's 4 a.m. at a party in Norway, so you might guess that maybe I'd had a drink or three. And I start singing along with the radio, Johnny Cash's version of Hurt. And they turn the radio down, and someone goes, you're joining us on stage tomorrow. It was a guy who was in a band. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And he goes, yeah, you are. I go, okay. Woke up the next morning.
Wait, stop there. You said okay? You were just like, okay?
Yeah, partly because it was 4 a.m. and I'd probably had...
a drink or three. Okay.
A drink or three. I don't drink anymore, but I used to be quite talented at it. And, practiced at the least. But, I was having a good time. I was on vacation and I was like, woof. And I did it. But it was terrifying. But I was like, well, okay. This is a horrible idea, but I'll do it. And I got up on stage and sang Hurt, and it was an awful performance in that I was hiding behind an iPad reading the words, which is always what you want to see on stage. Hiding is probably the best word. But I finish, and I think there's these polite applause, and I jump off stage and run to the bar. I hadn't had a drink yet that day, and I was like, give me all the beer to the bartender. And she doesn't move. And I'm ruminating over how I shouldn't have embarrassed myself and the band and inflicted myself on the audience. And I look up at her and give her this gesture like, please? Like, what? Where? I need a beer. And she looks at me and she says, I have goosebumps.
Oh.
And I went, what? And the band got off stage and they're like, you need to join our band. And I'm like, what? No. But I go into this in the book, but there's an author named Tim Ferriss, influencer, really remarkable human, wrote a book called The 4 Hour Work Week. And I got to be friends with Tim years ago and spend a little time with him. We're not great friends. I'm not pretending to be his buddy, but he inspired me like he's inspired so many others. And he said something to me. I asked him if he had really done all the crazy things he did in the 4 Hour Work Week. And he said he had, but he knew he was writing a book when he did them. So that was his motivation. And I sat straight up in bed the next morning and went, son of a gun, my friend Tim had a life worth writing about because he was writing a book. He didn't have that life and then write a book. And I thought to myself, I'll never write a book. It turns out I was wrong about that. But I said, I'll never write a book, but I'm going to start living my life like I'm writing one. And I'm going to start asking myself what would make the next chapter more interesting. Because this metaphorical book is what I'm going to thumb through on my rocking chair when I'm older. And I don't maybe have the energy I have now to climb mountains and do crazy things. And I made myself that promise. And I really have lived by that for close to 20 years now. And this was one of those moments where I was like, I'm not joining a band in Norway. Like, that's nuts. I live in America. And I thought about it a little bit, and I was like, it would make the next chapter more interesting. And they asked me again, and I said, yes. And everybody cheered. And then we all went, how's this going to work? And I said, I'll just send me your schedule, and I'll start flying over when I can. And I started being a guest vocalist in a band. And that's how it all started. And I wasn't terrible, but I was so bad at so many parts of being a performer. Couldn't remember words, like I struggled, all of that. But I asked myself after that first performance, did I have fun?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I did. Was it exciting? Holy cats, it was exciting. Did it make this chapter more interesting? Like, yeah. And if they ask me back, I'll do it again. And, I'm a guest performer, so I had all those thoughts while they were still performing on stage.
Yeah.
And they got off stage and they were like, you need some work, but this is going to be great.
Wow.
Can you do it again? I'm like, yes. And that was many years ago, but now I'm very confident performer who's having an absolute blast on stage delivering songs I wrote in front of, when I opened for Brad, 10,000 people. But last year I headlined a festival in Sweden that was 3,000 people. Like, sometimes there's 3,000 people there to see me.
Yeah.
What? That's nuts.
Wild.
But I found something I love and I was just okay at it, but I didn't stop working. And now I think I'm good enough at it that I'm having a wonderful time. And isn't that the best gauge? Like, how good are you as a singer? Well, I'm so good that I'm having a great time. Whatever that is, that's what I am. And isn't that fun?
It's so wild. There's two themes that I just keep picking up on. So you said you made a promise to yourself that you would live that way going forward. Like Tim said, he was writing the book. So you keep asking yourself, what will make the next chapter? But you also said back in the day that you made a promise to yourself that day on the U2 tour. Yeah. You keep promises to yourself.
Those are two big ones, right? But I do. I belong to an entrepreneurs organization, and we have retreats once a year where 7 of us will go some exotic place, rent a big house, and we will try and plan our lives and just work on ourselves and be better. And we usually have a segment where we have some lofty goals. And one of my proudest moments was, we were reviewing, and one of the guys went like, man, Scotty does the things he says he's going to do.
Yeah.
Like, we all say we're going to do a lot of things, and some of them get done. Scotty actually gets his stuff done. Like, he actually does the crazy things.
Yeah.
And
do you think that came from Mom? I'm actually wondering in my head right now because
maybe. And my dad was very hardworking too, but it came from, I don't know if I'd be that good at it if I hadn't been that dysfunctional and failed that hard and seen how awful it felt to not be the best version of me. Being that version of me that was not the best.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what it's like to be the best version of me, because I still am too dysfunctional to be whatever that lofty human is.
Aren't we all?
I am a much better version of me than I was yesterday, because I keep working at it.
Yeah.
But I think having all that awful time period where I was just broken and falling apart and that showed me what I don't want. The mind is a comparative instrument, right?
Yes.
I don't want that.
Yeah.
So I want the opposite of that. And so I've got that motivation, and that's coupled with the learned experience of trying, the tenacity that I learned. And it just adds up to, thankfully, someone who actually does stuff and not someone who sits ashamed and wishes they were doing stuff.
I agree. I'm inspired by how much you keep your promises to yourself.
And I think it's important to say that I do what I want to do. There have definitely been times in my life where I absolutely had to do something because otherwise I would feel like a failure. I have done a lot of soul searching and a lot of looking in the mirror, and I now regulate to where I do what I want to do because it will make me happy, not because I have to not feel, you know what I mean? Like,
I do. I mean, it's a gift.
I don't have to do anything. But what do I want to do? I don't have to write a book. Do I want to? God, I'd feel really good, and I'd be really proud to help some people, and I think I've got a story worth sharing. Yeah, I want to write a book. That sounds hard, but okay, let's write a book. And that's the mindset nowadays. I will say in my youth, I was desperately trying to not be that failure, and I felt life or death had to.
Yeah.
Now I just do what I want to, but it's a great evolution.
That's one of the gifts of midlife. I do think we stop, I don't know, we stop caring so much about what everybody else thinks. We start really leaning into ourselves, and we start being able to be just a little more picky. If we're fortunate enough, I know there's some people that still have to really just do what they got to do, and that's okay, but hopefully can find small things on the side that really light them up. But yeah, I think that's a gift as we get older, that we can start being a little more discriminatory about what we choose to do and spend time on. And
yeah, do what we want to do, not what we have to do. I mean, there's still things we have to do, right? There's still things I have to do for work.
Of course, got to pay the bills.
Yeah, but that's okay. That's just responsibility. But we're talking about dreams, and that they're different subjects, really.
Yeah.
Like, your dream can be a responsibility, but it's just a different feel. Like, what do I want to do with my life? I want to do this. And so that's going to, with any of those dreams, there's going to be some responsibility, or it's not going to work out. But it's all a choice.
I want to ask you about imposter syndrome, because I feel like there's a fine line between the fear of failure and imposter syndrome. And I feel like there was a thread of, there were multiple times where you sort of had those, oh my gosh, moments like, I can't really do this thing, even though you were doing the thing. And maybe you weren't doing it perfectly, of course, because none of us do. But you had those moments of, can I do this? Am I going to be a complete failure? So it kind of went back and forth for me. Do you feel like you have to battle with imposter syndrome at all? Or do you think that, once you set your mind up, you do? Okay.
I do. I think it's natural. I think it's wired into any of us that are introspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember someone saying I'm an artist, and me quickly correcting them and saying, no, I just sing for fun. And then they finished the interview, and they said, hey, can we talk about something serious? I'm like, sure. They're like, you're an artist. I'm like, well, not really. I'm just having a hobby. And they're like, okay, but you're absolutely an artist. Like, you've worked really hard. Like, I know from your interview that you worked really hard at being a good singer.
Yeah.
Like, really hard. And then you worked really hard at being a songwriter. And so it is a hobby, but you make art and you are an artist. And so the next time someone tells you you're an artist, just let yourself be proud. You can give that same answer if you want to sound humble, but I get the feeling that you are being inappropriate. You aren't giving yourself enough credit internally, and I'd like to correct that. And I really appreciated that conversation.
I think that was really good advice. I think there was also something I picked up on with your trajectory that I often tell people, if they can't figure out, if they're in this middle part of their life and they're trying to lean back into what they really wanted and find their dreams and they can't, I often say, go back to your younger self and find those threads that just kind of lit you up. And when I read the book and I was thinking about the things that you did, and they're kind of all over the place, but yet all kind of fit together. And I thought about when you were in college, and this was when you were trying to make a go of it at the beginning. There was that one class where you had, I don't know if it was a literature or a writing, there was some writing class where you were getting great grades without really having to, I don't want to say without trying, but it came easy. Let's say that it came naturally, right? Versus some of the other classes where you had to try, you were failing.
I had to do homework.
Yes. So,
Homework is awful. And homework, when you turn in homework and it gets a grade,
yeah,
if it's not perfect,
you're failing.
like I had to be perfect
Yeah, I get
for my
that.
reasons, right?
Yeah.
That have a lot to do with some things that happened to me when I was a kid. But if I wasn't perfect, I was going to get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't want that. And I don't mean physically, but emotionally.
Yeah.
And so I needed to be perfect or it would hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And so homework was almost never perfect, and I was just afraid of it, and it would break me down. But something about creative writing was like, well, this is different. There's no right or wrong. Like, you're just telling a story.
Yeah.
And that felt like it took a lot of pressure off. But as you'll read in the book, the 4 or 5 papers in, I wrote something that didn't get read in front of the class and wasn't the best one. And from that moment on, I never did another thing in college because to me, I had failed by getting a B plus because I had really tried and I wasn't perfect and that wasn't good enough. And I stopped doing everything in college because I got a B plus on a paper. So that's pretty twisted. But yeah, that's where I was at. That's how my brain was working back then.
I get all that. And I mean, it's so fabulous that you were able to move past that. But I guess the thread I was going at is you were a great storyteller back then, and even back then. And if you think about music, writing music, singing music, writing a book, it's all about storytelling. Even the video production you do, it's all about storytelling, whether it's your words or it's the act you're doing of putting somebody else's work together, a movement together. You really are blessed with the gift of storytelling. And I just see that throughout. So I think it's just a reminder for folks that if they're stuck and they can't figure it out, look back, there's signs, there's these threads all the way through.
My advice to your audience, at least what's worked for me, let's put it that way, because in the book, I'm very careful to not tell people what to do ever. I tell people what I did. I tell people how it worked. I definitely tell people how it failed. And I asked all my guests that too, and they generally didn't. I said, don't tell people what to do ever in the book. Like, this is not a self-help beat you over the head. This is an inspiring, here's what I did and you can learn from my journey book. But I live your life like you're writing a book. Like, you talk about the story. Your life is a story, and you are the lead character, and you are writing a book every day. In that story, you're writing another page, another chapter, and just try and make it interesting, because that is the story that you're going to look back at when you're older. You're going to sit in your rocking chair and you're going to smile. And thank goodness for iPhones, because we have a gazillion pictures. So even when our memory fails us, we'll look back and we'll be like, oh my gosh, look at my haircut. Why did I have that mullet, right? But then that'll bring all these other memories back. And so tell your story and try and make it interesting. Like, make it the most interesting story, because it is the one that you will be metaphorically reading when you get older and living moment to moment.
I love that advice. And it brings me to the question that I typically like to wrap the show with, and that is, if you could leave our listener with just one message, what would you want it to be? Is it that, or is it something else?
Yeah, we've already done that, right? So we could say it was that, but let's do this. Try. Don't be afraid to try and fail. And in fact, if there isn't failure on the path to whatever you're trying, it's probably not a big enough dream. So I would suggest planning a dream where you're going to fail along the way. I failed a whole lot on the way to all of my things, but it's been rewarding. And it turns out that failure, my greatest fear, ended up being my greatest teacher. All of my best lessons have come from when I failed. And so I'm grateful for them. And the failures are really the stepping stones that have gotten me across the river. So, and for me, it was extreme. It was failure. But in someone else, it might be, well, I just won't be great at that. I won't be good enough, or people will laugh at me, or whatever your fear like that is. It's not as bad as you think it is, just as soon as you start moving forward. So my one word advice would be to try.
Mm-hmm.
Just get out there and do whatever it is and it could be a simple goal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I dream about things like books that we have PR teams around, but I dream about, I spend a lot of time thinking about making a great model railroad in my new home, like things like that. Like, what are the things that you're not doing because you're afraid someone else might laugh at you or not think it's awesome? What do you think is awesome that you're not doing? Get out there and try.
I love that. We always say, just take one step. You don't have to know the whole path, as you proved over and over and over and over. Just take that step.
Yep.
And it'll get you there. Well, you guys, you can find all things related to Scott at his website, scottscovill.com. And I'll put that link in the show notes. And go grab a copy of Tenacious, The Art of Relentlessly Pursuing Your Wildest Dreams. It's not only inspirational, but it was an easy read. And like we said, it had some fascinating storytelling and surprising superstar contributors that are there as well. So I really think folks should go get it. I think they'll enjoy it. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been great to have you and get to know a little bit more about your story.
Yeah, it's been great being here. There's also tenaciousbook.com. So it has its own website also with bonus materials.
We'll go ahead and put both of those out there.
And a lot of pictures. And like, if you want to get to know my guests better, or if you want to see a picture of my mullet, it's all on the website, right? It has been really a pleasure spending time with you and your listeners. There's some inspiring ladies in there too. Kate Snow, NBC anchor, Katie Coleman, astronaut, and absolutely my mom. I am absolutely gender biased. I think ladies are the greatest, and I've struggled with men since I was a kid. But I am one, and we're all doing our best.
We're all doing our best.
And I think we're getting better, at least the right ones. So.
I do too. Thank you so much.
All right, cheers.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of Message in the Middle. I hope you found something in this conversation that reminded you that you're not alone and that midlife isn't about winding down. It's about waking up. You're not done. You're just becoming. If this episode speaks to you at all, please share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And if you're enjoying the show, I'd be so grateful if you could take a moment to leave a review. It really helps other women find this community and this podcast. Until next time, take care of yourself.